Hey, everybody, it's Mo Bunnell, your host here at Real Relationships, Real Revenue. I and my teams have trained almost 20,000 experts all over the world on sound, efficient, and authentic business development skills. And I'm here with Ron Tite today. Ron is the CEO of an agency called Church and State. He's written the book Think, Do, Say. It's absolutely phenomenal. And when I read the book, I wanted to have Ron on the show and reach out to him, and he was excited to be on. So I can't wait to get into it. In this episode, we're going to focus on deepening relationships. And this is a cool one because I like our episodes the most where it goes somewhere I didn't anticipate. And this one definitely did that. And it exceeded my expectations. Really, 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 really cool stuff from Ron that's coming up. Now, if you want our great, our best thinking on the mindsets that you need to have in your head to really think about business development the right way, sort of your business development operating system, if you will. If you want that, head over to growbigplaybook.com. That's growbigplaybook.com. You're going to get an instant download, the 8 beliefs you need to be successful at business development, and you can read it in about 8 minutes. It's a fast read, but it packs a punch. So go over to growbigplaybook.com for that instant download. And by the way, you'll be signed up for our weekly newsletter where we give one little insight every single week on something you can do to elevate your business development game. So you get that at growbigplaybook.com. All right, with that said, here's Ron Tite. Hey everybody, it's Mo Bunnell, your host here at Real Relationships, Real Revenue, and I'm with Ron Tite. And I love all this alliteration, Ron. It's amazing. It's like we planned it. Thanks for say thanks to your parents for naming you Ron. It's working out great for us. But in the last couple episodes, Ron he dropped some serious knowledge about how to think about your brand, your personal brand, your company's brand, your practice brands, your product brand. This Think, Do, Say framework is magic. And he covered that in the last couple episodes. And we went really deep last time about how to create and close more opportunities. Ron, I thought your 4-step framework was awesome. In this episode, folks, Ron, I want to ask you, I want you to share everything you got in your big brain. How can our audience deepen relationships and win the relationship advantage?
Well, that's a great question. What I love about it is to focus on the relationship, right? Know that if you have great relationships, enough of those relationships will convert, to use the funnel, kind of language. They will convert. That's not why you do them. That's not why you invest in relationships. Just know that enough of them will, and that should be enough. When I started my agency, I started and I ran into a client that was a client of mine, I think 15 years before. She used to be my old client at Dell when I was the creative director on Dell. And she said, I hear you started your own agency. And I said, yeah. And she said, who are your clients? And I said, I don't have any. I just started and I'm figuring it all out. And she said, I'll give you a project. I said, what? She goes, yeah, I'll give you a project. Let me figure something out. She helped launch my agency. And she didn't have a need, but she created a project. And why? Because of the relationship that I built 15 years before starting my own agency. Now, far too many people think when they start talking about relationships, they get in this panic of, I got to start building relationships because I got to grow the business. And so what that says to me is, oh, so you're only in relationships for the business side. So you don't actually care about the genuine human being who's there. You actually you want to have relationships with people that pay you. We can smell that a mile away. So what can you do to build relationships? I think is that you can have a genuine desire to have a connection with another human being. You can have a genuine desire to want to help to somebody. You have a genuine desire to be authentic. And authenticity is a $2 word, I think. But I think authenticity to me just means being comfortable with your imperfections. And because if you show up looking and acting and sounding like the stock photo version of a lawyer, of a consultant, of a marketer, of a salesperson, of a BD professional, I'm not buying it. I'm just not. I mean, I can smell that stuff a mile away. Mo, I had a great engagement in Sarasota, Florida, and it was with 100 CEOs. It was ridiculous. It was like the 100. Like, all the organizations. No handlers were allowed in the room. Like it was. I couldn't tweet out where I was because security was through the roof. It was just the room presenting to the room, basically. And I met this chairman of a global software company. And I met with this group about authenticity at the C-suite and C levels. And I met this guy who's from the deep South. He had a deep Southern accent. And he told me, he said, I used to be a VP at a CPG, at a consumer packaged goods company. When I hit VP, they sent me on a leadership development course. And he said, I soon realized that the sole purpose of the leadership development course was to get me to lose my Southern accent because they didn't feel it would give me credibility on the global stage. And then he goes, so I quit because I realized my voice, it ain't a bug, it's a feature. And he's right. Are those imperfections? They're not bugs, they're features. And that's what people buy. We talked in one of the earlier episodes of, people don't know where to look and they don't know who to trust. And so if you come at me as the stock photo version of what you think a BD professional is supposed to look and act and sound like, I'm already in a position of not knowing who to trust. My gut reaction is, if you're hiding the real you from me, what else are you hiding? That's not a way to start a business relationship, in my opinion.
Well, this is fun, Ron, because I just love it when the show lets me go somewhere that we didn't prep, and we both prepped a lot for this. So I'm going to dig deep on this because I love that story. So let's break it all the way down to an initial meeting. Boy, that really feels like where there's a switch, or a fork in the road. Where, boy, after a first half-hour meeting, a little introductory, say let's paint the scenario and say somebody that used you before is introducing you to somebody that could use you now. And you're in that first meeting, and boy, this is somebody you'd really love to work with. What's your take? Like, what's your advice to somebody where they feel the pressure, probably the pressure to go too far, maybe to close, if you will, when that's not the point. They definitely definitely feel pressure to impress. So what's your advice to them on how they should act in that first meeting so that they're authentic and there's the highest chance of success?
Great question. So my background, Mo, I don't even know that we talked about my background's in stand-up comedy. So I was a stand-up.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
I was a stand-up for 20 years while working in advertising, but a lot of my thinking comes from a stand-up brain, of like, how do you read a room?
You had stories like that talking about comics in the book. Yeah. Keep going.
Yeah. And so there's a line in comedy that we use that's called never ignore the reality of the room. So if somebody yells out, "You suck," everybody heard that. Everybody knows what just went down. And you can't ignore it. You can't ignore that reality. You need to call it out. You need to go to the person. So I think when you're in those situations, and it can be the situation that you described, or it can be a situation where you've spilled coffee on yourself and you feel like a moron, or you could be a situation where your slides aren't working. All those things, never ignore the reality of the room. Call it out. Call it out. I've had some of the best meetings was when you start off and it's like they're not buying it. They're just not buying it. And you can feel it that they're not buying it. And you know what I say? This feels like you're not buying this. You're not buying what you're like, okay, let's scrap that. Or, you know what? I remember, a boss of mine went to a pitch. We were a global agency for a client, and we were expected to get the Canadian business. And he went to meet the president of that client. And the client said, before you start, you know what? I'm really happy with my current agency. He looked at him and he goes, good for you. That's amazing. Nobody stands up for their agencies anymore. I'm not going to take any more of your time. That's awesome. And left. He read the reality of the room. And there was no sales pitch in the world that was going to win that meeting. And so he read it and he said, you know what? I'm gone. So in your situation where you said somebody else has introduced me, my gut is to go with a joke first and foremost. So to say, what was Frank thinking of putting us together? She's, boy, pressure's on, man, because I know Frank does a lot of business with you. I can't screw this up because I don't want Frank to feel this, right? And then suddenly people are, their guard is down because they know that you're being completely yourself, and they're that you're gonna read the reality that is the room, and that I think that honesty is really critical. It's being honest about the situation. It's about being honest about the role that your organization plays in the lives of the client on the other end of the table. We have something that we say when we reference Think to Say, and we say every agency has their own BS trademarked process. This is ours, right? Because we know every agency has been in. It's this method. It's that method. And we go, yeah. You know what? Everyone's got their own thing. This is ours. We think it's different. We think it's unique, and allow us to explain it.
I love it. I love that idea of starting with a joke. And just as you were talking about, I was having flashbacks of meetings where somebody would call it out, or when a different meeting started with a joke. So your stories are they bring it in. So really cool. And I think you're
Especially,
right.
sorry, Mo, especially
Yeah,
if something a disaster has struck.
yeah.
And so the stand-up in me, I remember going to it was a big pitch, and one of the people on our team, I use the example, he spilled 5 cups of Starbucks coffee in a rotating door. What do you call those doors?
Revolving door? I
Revolving.
don't know. We don't travel anymore. I don't even know what they are.
The
I don't leave
revolving
my
door.
house.
He goes to the revolving door of 5 coffees, right? All over him. And he starts to lose his mind. He can't handle it. And I looked at him and I said, what an opportunity. How many other agencies are going to walk through the door having spilled coffee? None. None. This is a wonderful opportunity to pivot from that to show how real we are. I remember doing a speech in front of 2,000 people, and for the first 15 minutes, my fly was gaping wide open. And I turned around and I see it, and some people would have panicked. And I went and I walked into the front row and I said, has this been down the whole time? And they go, mm-hmm. And I go, you had one job. One job. And if my fly is down, you do a little, you tug your ears, you do it, you do, right? Come on, this is us together, right? And not only did it kind of really diffuse the situation, it made me completely human, but it established what we in comedy call a callback. Because now I've got something to reference later on that says, if you think this is bad, well, it's not as bad as your fly being down in front of 2,000 people, but it's pretty bad. And now it's this thing that we can always reference. It's that little joke we have between us. And it all happened because my fly was down, or you spilled coffee on yourself.
Oh my gosh. I want to go. We're getting tight on time, Ron. We got a whole nother episode, but I want to ask more about this. Do you have time to stay? I know we're talking in front of the whole audience now. Okay.
That's
all right.
That's
so I ask you one more question, then we'll wrap this. We'll do our next episode. This is fun, folks. We're getting like bonus Ron tight here. So I've been curious. I've noticed something just in our wandering into it, that of course the beginnings of meetings are really important and the endings of meetings are really important. Primacy and recency effect is the science, tons behind it. But one of the things I've noticed has been helpful, just stumbling into it, is ending meetings by calling back. I didn't know there was a word for it. Some little joke that happened along the way. Have you found that's powerful?
In comedy, that every great comedy set should do that. A great comedy set should start with a joke or an insight that establishes the thread that goes through the whole thing. And then at the very end, you should revisit that very first joke. Because what that does is it completes the thought, it puts a nice bow on everything. It also, to the audience, goes, psst, we're done. Right? It's a nice way to end it. And they go, and there's no uncomfortable, like, so that's it. Any questions? Like, everybody knows that's the end. And that callback, I think, it's just a nice little bow on top that wraps everything up beautifully.
I love it. It's like when the last line of an article ties something back. You didn't see it coming, but it ties back something that was in the beginning or whatever. It's the live version of that. Ron, this is awesome. So, where should people go to get more Ron Tite and Church and State?
RonTite.com, ChurchState.com.
It's almost like you've thought those through. That's your name.
Or come to Toronto and just wander the streets looking for me.
In revolving doors with lots of coffee and a colleague that's stumbling and their chest is very warm. All right.
Yeah.
So let's finish up this episode with that. Folks, hey, if you didn't catch the earlier ones, they're awesome. In the next episode, I'm going to ask Ron, how do we hack our habits to do this cool stuff he's been talking about, even when we're really busy? Ron, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Mo.